Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Trade the Matrix. This is Morpheus. Today we're going to review SPX day trade plan from yesterday, March 27th, 2026. I have in front of you a US 500 chart and the plan that I gave out before the bell. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that this is not financial advice and I am not a financial advisor. So please do your own research. If you find this content helpful, please give it a like, give it a share, hit the bell notification, subscribe to the channel for future content. I appreciate the support. With that all out of the way, let's just jump right into today's video. So, US 500, this is an overnight and pre-market representation of the SPX. So this tracks SPX after hours. I typically am framing out my day trades on the 15-minute chart. I'm looking for key levels of resistance and support and liquidity. Sometimes it is as simple as taking the high of the overnight and the low of the morning, or vice versa, and plotting my fibs against that, and then basically just trusting that a respect of 50% of that mark on the upside is going to push up into resistance, or a breakdown is going to push down into support. If we break above my resistance, I will focus on longs. Price action does matter, and we'll review that in a second here. But more or less, the simplest way to approach each day, in my view, is to take my fib tool, find the equal highs, equal lows, and plot my support and resistance off of that. So heading into yesterday, I could clearly see here from the Asian session that um, we had, some equal highs here, and we were well within this manipulation wick. So after the bell on Thursday, uh, there was some tweeting going on from the president um, about ceasefire conditions, etc. I don't trade the news; I trade reactions off of the news. So um, regardless, we were inside of this wick. So this, in my opinion, was acting as resistance. Had we, broken out above this here, different story. But we were trading basically um, below the previous day's 50% mark, and I can cover Friday's action in another video. But let's focus on today. So I'm sorry, let's focus on Friday for today's video. So already establishing that we were trading up into resistance in the overnight session. I'm marking this as my high, my equal highs, and then I'm basically looking for, we're breaking down this London session low here, so there's pressure on equities heading into the bell, and I'm just going to take my fib tool here and mark the low, which is right about here. These are 15-minute candles, obviously, so around 9 o'clock we put in a low. There was a little bit of bounce. I kind of prefer this heading into the bell. I don't really love chasing a move down. So when there's a little bit of a bounce, I kind of am a little bit, I feel a little bit more, let's just say, I have more conviction that this is going to be a good support level. So I'll just take my fib tool and I'll mark the bottom there. And then I'll go right up to my equal highs here. And you can see here 65, 23. Okay. So there's my plan. So resistance at 65.23. The pivot is 64.79. So that's just 50% of this level here. And then my support is 64.35, 64.34.6. I just rounded to 64.35. And I'm always always paying attention to what level the VIX is at. So the VIX was 29, almost 30, heading into um, heading into the bell. It's telling me that there's a lot of volatility, high volatility, big swings. So we can anticipate, pretty big moves, 50 to 100 point moves. There's an exact correlation to how many points the market will move versus what the VIX is at. So when the VIX is over 20, typically we get bigger swings and the VIX is kind of trending up. I do have the VIX, plotted out every morning before I'm looking at it. I'm looking at whether we're trading, um, above our overnight session and where we are kind of in relation to heading into the bell. So essentially, we were looking at resistance of 30.08 and above 28.81. I was really focusing mostly on going short. So when the VIX is rising, I'm focusing more on selling rips. If this had rolled over below 28, I probably would have had a little bit more conviction for more of a bounce. But we've got key levels on the upside that we want to focus on before we start thinking about that. So I'm not really, wasn't really interested in going long yesterday unless we reclaimed, 50% of this level here, and ideally, honestly, breaking out above our 65.23 level. So you can, and that's just reflected in here, right? Long setup bounce off 64.35. So bounces off support, into our pivot area, fine, mean reversion, but you're really fighting the trend. When the VIX is ripping like this, we got a clear downtrend. I want to I want to, buy puts or short the market, into this resistance here. Basically, it's not that hard to see that the market was in a strong downtrend, right? So this is the, kind of the primary focus as I'm starting to head into the bell. Um, let's just read through our bearish setup. Okay. So short setup, entry breakdown below 64.35 or rejection at 64.79, 64.85. So breakdown below 64.35 is what we start to see here. Um, I'll just get these. Let me clean this chart up a little bit for you here. So 15-minute charts, obviously, trading the open, you can't really trade the open primarily off of a 15-minute chart. So 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, as the market opens. Now you need to be aware that on lower time frames, you're going to have more noise. So that's just the nature of the beast. Um, if you do not have to trade the open, but you can. And if you do trade the open, I tell people I usually like to keep my opening trades, pretty short and sweet. When the VIX is high, you want to keep your trades. You want to size down, and you want to keep your trades short and sweet because there's big bounces. It's going to move a lot. And if you get it right to the downside, you don't really need a huge position to have a great day. So you want to make sure that your risk versus reward is proper. You want to always risk minimum one to make two. So you risk 10 points to make 20. Okay, just simple math. You don't really want to take a trade if you don't at least have that risk versus reward over a long period of time. If you are taking one for ones or less, it's the market's going to catch up with you. Okay. So just something to note. But short setup, breakdown below 65.35. Where is 65.35? Let's just mark this out in real time here. So 65.35 is right here. Okay. We got 65.35 right here. So technically, you know, off of the opening candle here, we break support. So this tells me, all right, support isn't all that supportive. So we break down Um, Now, if you're simply following the plan, okay, you can take the close below 64.35. Ideally, I like a retest, and you do get the retest here. Something significant happens here though after 9:35. Okay, so this is our 65. This is our 64.35 level. We'll just mark that out like this, 64.35. Okay, so we know that we want to be short below this level here, and long. We'll focus on longs if we reclaim this level here. Now, a little bit of noise here, around 11:30. I'm going to show you how a good way to filter that noise out in a sec here, but let's just assume, okay, that we're going short here, and we're just going to simply follow the plan exactly as it says here. Okay, so short below 64.35. So you enter a short here. You want to know where your stop is before you even enter your short. You want to know where your stop is. So 64.50 to 64.60. Okay, where is that? Let's mark that out. 64.50 is here. And why is that significant? It's basically before the market opens, the high candle here. So it's also kind of a nice round number, 15 points. Let's just say a 15-point stop up to 64.35. Okay, so we're going to mark this out here, 64.50. All right, and if you want to, if you want a longer stop, if you're someone with an account that you can handle more of a drawdown, you can definitely use the higher level 64.60, which would basically be closing above these swing highs here. All right. So these are our stop outs. So if we're going short below 64.35, we are telling ourselves no matter what, if we get candles breaking up above and closing above 64.50, that's it. I'm out of my short setup until until, price, let's just say, comes back to 64.79 level and we get some strong wicks off of that. Targets 64.10 to 63.80. 64.10 is right about here. So you can see that in pretty short order, the market does move into our target level, our first target level, 64.10. 63.80, excuse me, also gets hit later in the day. 63.80. Okay. So if you just put conditional orders in and just walked away, all right, you're entering below 64.35, you're setting a stop at 64.50 or 64.60, and you're targeting obviously 64.10 to 63.80 range here. All right. 5 minute. You can see it's a little noisy here. Let's look at what the 15-minute looks like. So after the morning develops, after you have, some bars and some kind of liquidity setting up into, mid-morning, 10:15, 10:30. If you zoom out on time frame here and you look at the 15-minute bars, it becomes a little bit clearer. And what I mean by that is look at, this 15-minute candle here. So let's say you did nothing off of the open and price trades back up into, but we're trading below support. So in my mind, okay, off the open, we're below our support level. I'm thinking I want to short any type of strength here unless we reclaim this level, pretty um, with some volume, with some type of authority. But you can see here at about 11:30. So this thing rallies up here. This candle closes at 64.34, and this candle wicks up and then closes back down below. So this candle right here was an excellent signal. So 64.31, and you could have shorted this obviously down to 64.10, and then a break below 64.10 brings you to our next target here. Playing options, especially short-term expirations, it's easier said than done. You have to be quick. You have to be right, and you have to be right in a big way if you're trading, zero DTEs, especially, obviously. So SPX, expensive. The VIX is high. You're paying those Gucci prices. So, you can alleviate some of that with spreads, or you can trade SPY, which is, 1/10, obviously. And we can look at the SPY chart, or you can trade futures, and we'll take a look at the futures chart as well. Here's the SPY chart. I already have this set up. Same deal. You don't get the Asian session with SPY. SPY starts trading at 4 a.m. here. So I'm marking the high of the London session here at 4 a.m. and then the low right before the bell here at 64.10. Same deal though. Same premise. You can see here. These are the 15-minute bars. If you waited for SPY, after 10 a.m., rally back up into support here, and a nice topping tail inverted hammer close below support. Excellent place to go short on SPY. And basically you're trading that right down into targets 64 60. I'm sorry. You're trading that right into 639 was the first target. So 639 is, here, right? That's the first target. So trade down off of this candle here. And the second target is 636. And yes, it does blow my mind that these levels get hit, um, on a daily basis, weekly basis. So there's the first take profit. There's the second take profit. Remember, you want to be properly properly positioned size wise, and properly your risk versus reward minimum 1 to 2 if you can. Okay, that's going to keep you on the right side of things, generally speaking. We're monitoring the VIX, into the morning, seeing how it's playing out. Basically, this is heading back into that 11:30 zone here. This is when we get that lovely inverted hammer, and of course here the VIX does not close below our 50% retrace of our fib levels here. So focusing on shorts while the VIX is ripping. When the VIX rips, we don't buy dips. Um, so that's SPY. ES. ES is, for those that can trade ES, is a much more straightforward setup because you don't have to worry about theta. You enter the position, and you're not worrying about, is the contract going to expire worthless. You're getting in. It's a nice way in a high VIX environment, um, to not worry about theta. And obviously, this same setup here, bearish clean break below 64.79. You can see all three of these charts, right? There's your inverted 15-minute hammer at 11:30. You short the market there and take, obviously, you can take partials here depending, 64.50 and then 6400. These levels were all determined before the bell, before 9:30. So just keep in mind, in hindsight, you say, "Oh, you're showing stuff that already happened," but this plan happened before all of this happened. So when you can accurately view and pick out the liquidity and the equal highs and the lows, and you understand how weekly levels and daily levels work, it kind of becomes simple. So um, that's about it. I just wanted to kind of cover all of the kind of three different instruments that you could have traded off of Friday's action, and how I look at it. And you can see I'm not using any, I'm not even using any indicators here. I'm just literally trading. I mean, the only indicator I have is the candlesticks. Price is the ultimate indicator, real time. So if you can figure out the levels, trade off the levels, reduce noise, you reduce things you got to think about. Certainly, there's things that are helpful. RSI, MACD, all that stuff. But when I'm day trading, I really like to focus on the levels first, and everything else comes kind of secondary. I mean, we certainly, in the Discord, I am um, recognizing important, gamma levels. I use quant data and very helpful tool. I'm looking at the interval map. I'm looking at net drift. I'm looking at exposure by strike, and something that was kind of clear to me in the beginning of the day was that we were likely going to test 6,400. That was the highest gamma level. We were breaking down below our support level of 6,435. So and other things that play into it, of course, the day before we were looking for the break of 64. We were looking at for a test of 64.75. We got that 64.73 test closing at the lows. That's kind of bearish. Then you get this gap down here. um so kind of things were playing into our thesis anyway, and that definitely helps. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.